up, y'all? Episode number 2, season number 3, Mambo number 5. Today we tackle an iconic film, one that pushed together two actors that I think played very well together, but we'll get into that a little later. Our film today is 2012's American crime drama Lawless, starring Shia LaBeouf, Tom Hardy, and Jessica Chastain, and we are joined by one of my best friends, Mike DeCamilla. You may remember him from such podcasts as Season 1's Draft Day and Season 2's Monster. I do want to take this as an opportunity to say thank you to everyone who checked out DFAT Wars. If you haven't yet, head over to Gutsy Media's YouTube page and see all 3 rounds of our movie trivia fun. We had a great time doing it, and I'm sure you'll have a good time watching it. So without further ado, on with the show. At movies. And the reason, there we go, now it's kicking in. It's a pleasure when we get together and chat movies. And the reason why is because you're one of my guests who put some serious thought into your movie selections. And I just want you to know, I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you having me back. Hopefully there's no mishaps like we've had in the past. This will be a third time's a charm type of deal, right?
It's true. That is true. Absolutely. So you picked 2012's American crime drama Lawless, starring Shia LaBeouf from Transformers. He was in Transformers Dark Side of the Moon right before this in 2011. So for those of you who are Shia LaBeouf fans, on the scale of Shia LaBeouf craziness, he's just starting to inch into the crazy. So he does Transformers in 2011. This comes out in 2012. And then by 2014, by the time he does Fury with Brad Pitt, he's full-blown crazy. So
now, the first time you said his name, it was right. Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf. Also, Tom Hardy, one of my all-time favorite actors. He's in between a comedy, This Means War. I don't know if you remember that movie. That was like early in his career, 2012. Also 2012 Lawless, and then also 2012 Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises, right.
Which is crazy. Obviously,
fun fact, in this movie, he was actually bigger than what the producer was hoping for because he was preparing for the Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah,
so they were hoping for a skinnier Forrest.
Yeah, so his preparation for Dark Knight Rises is going to heavily influence the movie of Lawless and how it turned out and the character, and also some on-set antics that we'll get into later. And then Jessica Chastain, phenomenal actress. She's just getting off of The Help from 2011 and just before Zero Dark 30 in 2012, which I really think Zero Dark 30 is what's going to launch her career.
Oh yeah, 100%.
A household name at that point. This movie comes out in August 29th, 2012. It's screened at the Cannes Film Festival in May, but comes out to theaters in August. So what drew you to this movie? Why Lawless?
Okay, so you mentioned it earlier. I try to look into, okay, what is Bobby like? What do I think? If I give him a movie, he's going to think the movie's good.
So season 3, as if you guys know, I challenged all the guests to pick a movie that they thought was going to wind up on our top 10 at the end of the season. We'll have to wait and see what happens. So with that direction, you picked Lawless.
Yeah, well, not only that, but it's like this time I was like, okay, what would impress him has to be something that maybe would impress me at the same time. And this movie was always in the back of my mind. Like I remember when I watched this movie the first time, legitimately after the movie, I was like, I fucking like this movie. Like I really like, and I don't say that very often like that. But then, time went by and I kind of forgot about it. And then when I was thinking and like doing some research, like what movie should I present to Bobby? For some reason in the back of my mind, it came up and I didn't even know the name of the movie. That's why I was like, damn, I know what it is. I just started researching like Western gangster movies and I found it. I was like, oh shit, this is one of my favorites.
Yeah, so it's funny that you talk about it being a Western. It very much is a combination between a Western and a gangster. It's set in like the 1920s, 1930s. Yeah, Prohibition. And it follows a family and we'll get into the details of the movie later. Let's hit the bullet points real quick on the stats of the movie. It's 116 minutes. It's about an hour and 56 minutes. The budget for the film, $26 million. The box office 54.4. So it does positive. It does almost double, a little over double, just about double.
Right.
So it's right on that line between what we would consider being a successful movie and a not successful movie. It's kind of right on that hump there.
Well, I
It's
don't think it helped that not to interrupt you, but I don't think it helped that was it John Hillcoat was the director.
mhm.
He, in my opinion, and I'm not a big movie buff. Maybe you probably know more, but he's not as well known as some of these other, Steven Spielbergs or just different directors. So
Yeah, for sure. So John
this movie to
Hillcoat,
me was like a sneaky good movie.
yeah, the only other movie that he's done is the movie The Road. I haven't seen that. It was a pretty popular movie. He's done a lot of video shorts. Same thing with the writer, Nick Cave. He's really done nothing else. He's actually a
Right.
composer mainly as a profession. But the movie's produced by Red Wagon Entertainment, Revolver Films, Blum, Hanson, Allen Films. It's distributed by the Weinstein Company. Now, the Weinstein Company, obviously, everything shit hits the fan in October of 2017 when that New York Times article is published. The company doesn't file for Chapter 11 until 2018. It's eventually sold to a Dallas-based equity company called Lantern Capital for $289 million. So there is no
Wow.
more Weinstein Company. It's now owned by the Lantern Capital in Dallas, Texas. Little fun fact
Well,
there.
that's kind of fun. Now,
You
did this dude do something about the Black Mirror TV series?
Which one? Nick Cave, the writer?
No, John Hillcoat.
Yeah, he's done some of the episodes on Black Mirror. Yeah, mostly like mostly short films, shit like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you touched on it a little bit earlier. The movie's based on a book called "The Wettest County in the World" by Matt Bondurant.
Which is funny because it's Bondurant.
It's the same name as the characters in the movie. So the book is based on his grandfather Jack,
Yep,
who is actually the
exactly.
youngest of the three boys. So it's Jack, Forrest, and Howard.
And Jack is
Forrest is
Shia LaBeouf.
yeah, Jack is Shia LaBeouf. Howard is the middle of the sons. He's played by a gentleman by the name of I got it here somewhere. Jason Clark. Jason Clark, in my opinion, is phenomenal in this movie. He does not get enough credit, and we'll talk about this. He's got a couple of key scenes. You might remember him from Zero Dark 30. He was in Terminator Genesis. He was in Dawn
I
of the
remember,
Planet of the
yeah.
Apes. He's one of those actors that you definitely recognize his face, but you might not know his name. Jason Clark, great in this movie. We'll get to that a little later.
Well, this movie had a slew of just good actors. Just, they had
Yeah,
a
up and
whole
down the
laundry
whole list
list.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously the oldest brother, Forrest, is played by Tom Hardy. The book gets opted in 2008. They loved the idea of the brothers living in the end. Traditionally, the gangster film teaches us that we've got to pay for our sins. Usually, the gangster is shot down in a blaze of glory and doesn't get up again. Nick Cave went on to say, we also loved the idea that it sort of touched on the whole immortality that a lot of these guys start to feel when they do survive so many strange experiences. According to Cave, a lot of brutal stuff did not make it from the novel to the film. So I wanted to touch on that a little bit because we are going to go on to talk about the immortality kind of legend behind Forrest in this movie, which plays very interesting that it was built on reality.
Well, and funny you say that because it's not even just Forrest, it's Howard. So at the beginning of the movie, they're riding in the car, those three, and they're bringing the moonshine, whatever. This is after they shot the pig, and
How can
they
you say
talk.
that so casually? This is after they shot the pig.
No, but so they're driving it, and I think it's Shia LaBeouf's character Jack is saying, basically his family, his brothers are indestructible. But he's like, yeah, he said Howard was at the Great War, and his
Yeah,
whole battalion died at sea, and he was the only survivor. And then
yeah.
Forrest lived through the Spanish flu that he caught along with their mom and dad, I believe, which his mom and dad died, and Forrest lived through it.
Yeah, so these guys literally think they're immortal. They start kind of believing their own bullshit, and
Right, they do.
it's pretty interesting how it transcends the characters. So the tagline for the film: "When the law became corrupt, outlaws became heroes." This is a missed opportunity, in my
You
opinion.
absolutely 100%.
Where's the marketing guy here? This is what it should have been. When the law becomes corrupt, the corrupt become the law. I mean, you got to do the back and forth. That's the mirror image. People
Bro,
love that shit.
whose face do you show when you do that?
Oh, you got to do like a split face, half Tom Hardy, half like that Chicago cop.
Oh,
That's what you should
dude,
have done.
that Chicago
See?
cop. I like that.
I should design shit like that.
I'm like, guys,
Movies rated R for strong, bloody violence, language, and some sexually nudity. Which we get to see Jessica Chastain naked, that was cool. I like
it
when
was
movies
just
sneak that in there.
I don't know some of the whole both of them, Shia LaBeouf and Tom Hardy, both had their women in the movie, and I didn't really care for either aspect.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I was thinking about this earlier too. Jessica Chastain's whole storyline does not need to be in it at all. Like
Not at all.
there's no rhyme or reason for it. I guess it does kind of humanize Forrest a little bit, but you could have done that through other means or just
But
not at all.
I do kind of like how they didn't really give you a backstory about her. Like she was there.
Yeah.
You kind of heard a few things throughout the movie, but other than that, it's like you don't know who she is, but you're okay with her in that movie. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I like her. She's cool.
Yeah, I like how she just kind of shows up and you get the sense that she's running away from something, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm kind of fine not knowing, you know.
Right.
So yeah, let's get into it a little bit. So the movie opens up and it says it's based on a true story. And like you said, there's a bunch of kids running around killing pigs in this
Well,
opening scene.
I think what they're trying to portray is the initial scene that opens as a kid, and it starts off with the other kid saying Jack. So obviously we're talking about uh, Jack Bondurant, which is Shia LaBeouf,
Right, the
and
youngest of
he's
the three.
right, and they need to kill the pig, or they're gonna kill the pig for whatever reason, and Jack has the gun, he just won't pull the trigger, and Forrest is the one that says, you won't do it, and then Forrest ends up pulling the gun, and that's where the movie starts. They're pulling the trigger, shooting the pig, and boom.
Yeah, this whole opening scene, I don't. It has no relevance in the movie. It's kind of just weird. It seems very weird.
I kind of disagree though. I think they're portraying Jack as this innocent kid. Um,
I
I
mean,
think
looking back on it, I get that. But
let
at
me
the
ask you a
time when
question.
you don't know the characters, it's like I
Let me
don't
ask you a
know.
question.
Yeah, go
At
ahead.
this point in time, who's the main character in the movie, do you think?
Jack.
Okay. A lot of people mistaken that. A lot of people think this movie's about Forrest.
Well, but at this point in time when I'm watching it, that's the only character name I know. I mean, it's got to be the
Right.
main character, right? Like they're obviously alluding to the fact that you need to know this guy first.
True.
Um, I will say this though, I love the feel of the movie. It's very backwoods. You get an opening scene of like a bunch of these fires lit in the woods because
Oh
they're all
yeah, yeah.
the stills, which is
Yes.
pretty cool. But yeah, at no point in time do we go into the big city or do we see a bunch of like tall buildings. It's really just
Yeah.
woods and
Right.
and
And
back road.
the only time you see like buildings per se is in one of the early scenes with Shia LaBeouf and
Yeah.
we'll talk. But I mean, yeah, it's a lot of even the beginning after the pig was a lot of they showed the woods,
Well, I mean that really is the scene you were just talking about is really the next scene. It's so Gary Oldman is in this movie. He's
which is
a
awesome.
freaking gangster, and they show him. So they show him early on as kind of like just things that happen around town. And I guess
Right.
they live close enough to Chicago where some of the Chicago mafioso bootlegging stuff has poured over a few times. So you get these quick glances of like Gary Oldman driving through town or like a high speed chase, and he's got a Tommy gun. He's a gangster. He's a
He's
straight up
legit.
gangster. He's
He's
legit.
legit.
And then you got these, and I'm gonna butcher their name, these Bondurant boys, who are basically bootleggers in this town outside of Chicago, and you see them, delivering moonshine to the cops, which
Right.
is pretty cool,
Yep.
and you see them delivering moonshine to the funeral of a little bean. There's a funeral going on, and they deliver moonshine to that. They
Well,
hang
yeah,
out
it
for a
was
while.
that was the messed up part is they were almost attacked in that scene too because they were delivering to colored people.
Right. So this is the best part. These are my notes that I wrote down. So I wrote down black funeral, little bean, because they did make it a very apparent this is a black funeral, and that's what
They had
causes
that dude sitting up, smoking and
right.
drinking.
It was awesome. So they come out from delivering the moonshine, and there's a couple guys there that are trying to make trouble because they're delivering to the colored people. I wrote in my notes, Forrest is a bad man.
Dude,
He's got
that's
brass knuckles and he like beats the shit out of these guys. Jack Shia would drink moonshine on set, which almost caused his co-star to leave the film. Tom Hardy and Shia LaBeouf got into a huge fight on set. Did you hear about this?
no.
So this is a huge story that came out of the filming of this movie. So the way the story goes is that Shia LaBeouf and Tom Hardy got into a fight on set, and Shia LaBeouf knocked Tom
Shit.
Hardy out.
Shut the fuck up.
Swear to God. So that was the story for a couple of years.
Damn.
So Shia LaBeouf goes through his crazy phase. Tom Hardy, if you listen to any interviews he's done, he's a few screws loose too. Tom Hardy's
Right.
one of my favorite actors. I love Tom Hardy. The dude is just
Well,
insane.
hold that though, because we need to talk about that. We need to talk about your feelings about these two actors. We had
Okay,
that conversation before.
yeah, for sure. So Shia LaBeouf does the show on YouTube, the Hot Ones,
Oh yeah,
and they
which was
ask him about that.
phenomenal.
So he tells a great story where he says basically he's got his girlfriend on set and they're hanging out in the trailer or whatever. And he goes, me and Tom were good friends. We used to like, just wrestle, like we were like brothers.
Right.
And he's like, he came back from his weight training because he's weight training during this movie to get into shape for Dark Knight. And out of nowhere, he bursts into Shia LaBeouf's trailer. Now, Shia LaBeouf is butt naked and they start wrestling, and Tom Hardy's like lifting him up and throwing
What
him
the
around because
fuck?
he can. He's huge. And he trips and he falls down a set of stairs
Oh
and
shit.
he hurts. I wrote it down somewhere. He ends up hurting himself. And then when he's telling people on set, Tom Hardy's telling people on set the next day that he hurt himself because Shia LaBeouf knocked him out. And Shia's like, I didn't knock you out. So that's how the rumor got. Tom Hardy started that rumor, which
So
I
they
thought
were
was
just fucking
hilarious.
around.
They were just fucking around. Yeah.
Oh,
So we're introduced to Shia LaBeouf's love interest, who is the daughter of a preacher,
which is
and
kind of awkward.
which is kind of weird.
But let's hold
Uh,
on. So we accidentally skipped over Gary Oldman. We didn't tell the story about
okay, so Gary Oldman is. I wrote down
because I
earlier.
think that's pivotal for a future
Oh,
thing that we got to
100%.
talk about.
I wrote down earlier in my notes, Gary Oldman equals gangster. And then this scene happens, and I wrote down Gary Oldman equals fucking gangster. Like, so Shia LaBeouf is going to the store or something. Like he's
Yeah,
walking up to the
he's I think he's like filling up with water or maybe getting empty moonshine bottles
Yeah,
or some
so
shit.
he's walking through their town, and when I say their town, it's like one dirt street with
It's like a
maybe
western.
a
It's like a
dozen.
western town.
Yeah, exactly. And Gary Oldman pulls up in his vehicle, like going up like super
Well,
fast.
they go. Oh, they drive by almost. They
Right,
like sped up almost as if they're getting the fuck out of there, and they
and then
stop.
slam on his brakes. He hops out, pulls out his Tommy gun. There's another car coming. He just freaking blows up the car. The car swerves, hits a building. He keeps shooting. And then he like does this gangster walk back to his car and like he looks at like Shy, gives him a wink, like, yeah, dude, fuck you. It was so gangster. He just did not. The best part of that was that little thin cigarette he had that was
The
like you
whole
could
time.
tell it was like self-rolled. It looked
The
like it was
whole
nice and
time.
tight. It was perfect. It
But
was, and then
it's even better. So at the end, they drive off, and Jack Bondurant like realizes what the fuck just happened,
right.
and then he instantly thinks of Cricket, who is I think it's another brother of his, and
Yeah,
he
there's
runs
another
out.
friend. Yeah,
Yeah, he runs out to grab the shells
right.
from the
Because Gary
bullets.
Oldman is like their hero. Like he's like
Right.
the
It's
coolest guy in the
AKA
world.
Floyd Banner.
That's his name, Floyd Banner. That's the
Yep,
gangster's
yep.
name.
So
So
now we skip that, and then the next thing I want to talk about is how you said Tom Hardy is a badass. So
he
they
is a
went to
bad,
that funeral, right?
right.
I thought this shit was fucking hilarious the way he played this. So let's take it back. So they Howard and Forrest go into the funeral. Shia LaBeouf or Jack stays in the car. Um, they're just like in an alleyway or whatnot. And for whatever reason, Jack gets out of the car, and three guys walk up to him. Mainly one guy gets in his face, and he starts asking him questions, and he's like robbing him basically. and he
Yeah.
pulls out a knife. He's like, I'm going to stab you or whatever, whatever. And then Forrest and Howard walk out, and he goes, who are you? He's like, are you the main guy or whatever? He's like, are you the leader or such and such? And I thought it was fucking badass how Forrest was just talking. It was kind of just like random shit. He was like, sometimes we go through life and birds fly through and they don't even see the shit that's changing right in front of them. And
Right.
he's saying that as he's putting the brass knuckles on, basically insinuating, motherfucker, you don't even see me put my brass knuckles on.
Right. He's crazy. He's crazy. He plays it so well. And what was best about this is afterwards I saw a couple of interviews where they were talking about how his thought process on the character was he wanted to play it very maternal. He wanted
Right.
to be a grandmother. So he did the mannerisms of his grandmother. He walked with a shuffle. He did these kind of like small, light steps. If you
He's
watch the
criticized for that.
film, he's even got like a shaw
It's like a
on the whole
fleece.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy that
And he
he
was
does that.
criticized for that.
I know, which was ridiculous because I thought it was done very well.
Like
I
he was
think
criticized for a lot of the times he would like do this moan like this. Mm.
if you want to see Tom Hardy as one of the greatest actors of our generation, watch the TV series Taboo. He did one series, or I think maybe it might have been 2 seasons. It might have been 2 seasons for FX, and this show is freaking awesome. It's amazing. Watch
Oh,
that. You'll love it. But anyway, so Jessica Chastain's character shows up. She's come from Chicago. She just wants to get away from the city and wants to work at the Bondurant Boys
yeah, she
little.
wants to go somewhere that's quiet and like no busyness and no nothing
Right.
going on. Basically, is what she
So
wants.
in addition to moonshine, they have a rather large house and they have like a bar kind of
Right.
hotel type thing set up. So it's a hang around spot, and she's gonna be like the bartender slash manager, if you will. And she gets the job, and she has this kind of flirtation with Forrest, where like he takes his hat off and puts it on the table, and like she moves it to the chair, and he moves it back to the table, and
But
like
he
they're
waits until she walked away to move it back.
right. It's very flirtatious.
Right.
So then obviously we have our conflict starts happening. The local cops that the Bondurant boys have been paying off show up at their establishment, and they have a couple new friends. And these
Yeah.
friends are cops from Chicago. And
Hey, that's it's a special deputy. Okay.
right,
It's a
they're
special
basically in
deputy and
charge
the
of.
Commonwealth attorney.
There you go. Yeah, they have fancy titles. They're in charge of making sure that all of the alcohol goes away from the whole, region area that they're in. And they're basically here to say, give us some money and we won't bust you. And or excuse me, Forrest's whole premise is I don't mind paying off the local cops. It's the cost of doing business, but I'm not going to be shaken down by these out of towners, and basically tells them to go fuck themselves. And he does it in a very direct manner,
Dude, that
bypassing.
scene is like by far one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, it's very cool. So you have like the head honcho guy. He's in the car. He's off in the distance. Then you have his peon who's out talking shit to Forrest, and then the two local cops. And
Yeah, so
ra-
I thought I had it. What the heck is the Commonwealth attorney name? It's Mason Wardell,
there you
and then
go.
Special Deputy Charlie Rakes.
So rather than talk to Charlie, Forrest walks around everybody and goes right up to the guy in the car and like knocks on the window
Yeah,
and is
but
like, yeah,
you got to tell the story before that. So essentially, this guy. Let's describe him a little bit for the listeners here. So this guy walks up. Everybody who's familiar with Guy Pearce is the
yes,
actor. But
great actor.
if you've ever listened to the movie back in the day, I forgot the name of it. But the band, or not the movie, the song back in the day, the band was like Alien Ant Farm, and they
Hmm.
remade a Michael Jackson hit, and it was a good song. We were in like high school, right? This dude
Yeah,
had like a weird haircut with like the Little Rascals cut. That's what
yeah,
Charlie Rakes had like this cut, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a line down the center of his head, and then it was like,
glued. It's like,
yeah, it
yeah,
was
it's like so
insane.
much gel. It's like squished to your head.
Yeah, so they walk up, and Forrest says to the sheriff, and he won't talk to Charlie Rakes. Forrest
Right.
is looking at the sheriff, and he says, basically, who the fuck are these guys? And Rakes walks up and pokes Forrest, and he's like, I'm the guy that's going to make your life hell unless you pay, basically.
Right.
And Forrest looks at him and just says, don't you ever fucking touch me again, right? And then the sheriff says, hey, we want to buy some. Oh, go ahead.
One thing I noticed, so he pokes Forrest and talks some shit, and Forrest straight looks him dead in the eyes, like stone cold Tom Hardy eyes,
He did.
and it's just blatantly, don't ever fucking touch me again.
Those
And
little
then if you
beady
watch the
eyes.
rest of that scene, he doesn't. He doesn't
Right.
touch him after that.
But
And
it's
it's like
funny.
he continues talking shit, but he knows I'm not gonna touch him.
But it's funny because so he touched him, right? And then the sheriff, I think the sheriff was kind of asking for a bottle of moonshine just to kind of change the subject.
Right.
He's like, hey, let me get a bottle of moonshine. He gives him some money. And as they're talking, Forrest and the sheriff, Rakes is walking around the corner just looking at Maggie, who's sitting on the porch there.
Right.
And Forrest, before he takes the money, he looks over at Rakes and notices that he's looking at Maggie. Then he takes the money, walks over to the Commonwealth attorney who's in the car, and he says, can I help you, son? And he says, yeah, you bring this fucking clown around here again, and you'll be the person to pull the cleaver out of his head. And he sticks the money in that dude's pocket and walks away.
It's crazy. He's crazy.
It was badass, though.
So Forrest tells the big guy to fuck off. And that's when you get the legend. So the local cop tells the Chicago guy that there's a people around here think the Bonnaroo boys are immortal. And you kind of get the sense like he doesn't really believe it, but he definitely believes that they're, badass, hard to kill dudes. It's I don't I think that the local cop does a good job of portraying the facial expressions of like, does he believe it or does he not believe it? Like, is he just
Right.
telling you the legend or is he really buying it? Which is really cool. Um,
But
that
I think they both convey immortal in different ways at the same time, sitting at that same table. I think like the guy who's talking, the sheriff or the deputy, whomever, I think he says indestructible because like if you come after him, everybody around here is going to come after you.
Yeah,
And I think the other guy thinks basically you can't kill him.
yeah. It's definitely a weird scene. Guy Pearce is I don't know. He's not doing it for me in this movie. I like him, but as an actor, I think he's hit or miss. And this movie is not his strong suit. He doesn't ruin the movie, but he's not the highlight of my movie experience here.
Well, I think his
Um,
point is to make you not like him.
yeah, he makes me uncomfortable, and maybe that's
Yeah.
the point. He just makes me uncomfortable in the scenes that he's in. So then we have this whole thing where Shia LaBeouf goes to church. He basically sneaks. I don't want to say sneaks in, but he walks into this church to see this girl. First off, what the hell religion is this?
Yeah, it was
Um,
like a mixture of Amish and
that's what I wrote down. I wrote down Amish. I looked it up later. They're Mennonites, so they're very close to Amish. Basically they're in this small room, they're like praying and they start washing each other's feet
yeah, like they
and
switch sides.
right. And Shia LaBeouf's character, or maybe Shia LaBeouf on the set really has been drinking, so he's in this hot room washing feet.
He's
So
profusely sweating.
yeah, he runs out before he gets sick. It's just really weird. um then he bumps into the Chicago cop, and basically the Chicago guy beats the shit out of Jake, the
Yeah,
youngest
the,
brother.
Rakes, the Chicago guy, went to the Bondurant household
Right.
looking for, and he walks in and he talking to Cricket and the other
Mm.
old lady. He says, "There's three things you need to tell me. Where's the still? Where's the liquor? And where's the money?"
Right.
And then that's when Jack walks in and says, "We don't have any of them." And then that's where Rakes is like, "Who the hell are you?" He's like, "Oh, so you're a Bondurant, huh?"
Right.
And that
And he beats the shit out of him. He
oh,
he
dude, he
roughs him
beats the
up pretty
shit
good.
out of him.
What's crazy about this is you watch this happen, and it's pretty brutal. You watch this happen, and then the next scene is obviously Forrest finding out about this or seeing his brother, and I'm immediately like,
At
"Oh
the
man,
bar.
Forrest is about to, fuck some shit up. Like he's gonna be mad. He's gonna be looking at his brother." But rather than be this consoling brother, he tells Jake, and I quote, "As long as you're a brother of mine, you'll never let this happen again." Like,
He wants him to
like
toughen up.
yeah, like exactly, like toughen up and fight back. And I was like, damn, that's crazy.
But that's what stood out to me more is that So Jack is sitting there filling up the salt canisters for the bar, and Forrest walks up, and I think the first question he asks him is, he says, what do you intend to do now?" And
Yeah.
that's what I like the best. I was like, "Oh shit, that was
Hell
kind of
yeah.
cool."
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And he's definitely trying to toughen his brother up, which I thought was awesome. So then the two cops show up and they try to like, harass Forrest a little bit and get some money out of him. Um, and this is one of the greatest scenes in the movie, I think.
Hey, come take a seat at the campfire. You're not the only one who joins. I've got friends that come over sometimes, too. We talk about a ton of interesting things from geek culture. Then we cover some conspiracies or philosophical thoughts or monsters, We talked about Bigfoot in one episode. It's a lot of fun, so come join me at the Campfire Chats, a DFAT entertainment podcast hosted on Spotify and other fine places you find podcasts.
Need more context on your favorite movie?
Is Obama.
Obama, okay.
Senator Obama.
Ever wonder why they did or didn't do that thing or include that scene?
This is prime. This is
Perfect,
quality entertainment.
Check out Gutsy Media Podcast as my friends and I take a deep dive into everything from blockbusters to indie films.
The weakest apple cider bitch beers.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. That's Gutsy Media Podcast for everything movies.
Because Forrest, calm, cool, and collected, sitting on the porch, just rocking back and forth, talking to the cops. And he knows the cops are there to shake him down. His brother just got beat up, and he's like, "Have you met Howard?" And out of the house,
you can hear the
like
steps.
a freaking giant gorilla, Howard comes out, Jason Clarke, and just lays into these cops. And the cop tries to grab his gun. What are you going to shoot me? You going to shoot me?
Dude, no, it was so funny. Like it was almost like comic relief because you could hear Howard's footsteps in the house before Forrest goes, "Hey, have you guys met Howard?"
Yeah, it was great. This whole scene was shot very well. Like you're watching Forrest walk out of the house from behind, but it's like close to the ground. You can't really see who it is. And as soon as he says the name, it's great. It's just a very well shot scene. So at this point, we're about halfway through the movie, and this is where I'm like, okay, both of them are gangsters. Like I didn't think Howard was that gangster until now, but yeah, Howard's pretty gangster too.
Absolutely.
So Forrest has to deal with some new people who are going to show up, and he tells Howard he wants Howard to be there. He doesn't know these people; they're from Chicago. Howard has to go check the stills, but Forrest says that's fine. Just be back by 11. He's not back by 11. Howard gets drunk. Yeah, because there's moonshine. He gets wasted, passes out, and Forrest is stuck meeting these guys on his own. Shit goes down. This is what I wrote in my notes.
Oh, God, here we go.
Forrest kills, and then I crossed off kills, gets killed, crossed off gets killed, but she turned around. That's what I wrote in my notes. So this is the scene what happened. So the two guys from Chicago basically rough Forrest up, and they...
Well, no, so you don't really know that those are the two guys, in my opinion. You don't know those are the two guys until later on. And a big part of it is, so at one point that I think we already went past and didn't talk about was Rakes went to the apartment of Maggie and brought up, what she used to do in Chicago. I think she was a dancer or something like that. And these two guys from Chicago at the bar were sitting there, and they were basically like poking at her about it, like, "Oh, where are your feathers?" or this and that. And Cricket, I think it was a setup to where Cricket was kind of watching how these guys were before Forrest did business with them. Because if you didn't notice, when stuff started going sour and they started running their mouths, Cricket walked over, and all he did was like a head nod, like no. And that's when Forrest got up and walked out to the bar, and the dude had his fucking hand stabbed.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
Yeah. So he had the guy. So one of the guys had his hand stabbed, and he goes, "I bought an extra jar of moonshine, and she won't give that shit to me." And she, again with the nod, she just looked at Forrest, just like basically with her eyes, "No, I didn't," or "No, they didn't." And he just looks at them. He's like, "No, you guys didn't. Whatever. You guys better fucking leave." He was like, "We came here to buy moonshine." He's like, "I'm not selling it to you." So he's like protecting them, mind you. Let's take a step back. It was funny to me. So the second time I watched this movie, the first scene that you see those two men, it's shot from like the bar angle, right? And the guy that gets punched in the throat in the scene with the brass knuckles, he already has like a hematoma on his damn neck. So I think it was made to like pop when he got punched.
Yeah, probably. Good catch. Yeah, that was probably done by mistake. This is a pretty brutal scene. So she leaves. Jessica Chastain's character leaves. They close up for the night, and Forrest is there by himself because he lives there.
He drugged those dudes out.
Right. He gets into a scuffle with these guys. He ends up punching one of them in the throat with the brass knuckles.
That shit was awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty badass. But at the end of the day, it looks like Forrest is going to win. He's going to kill both of these guys. But instead, they somehow turn the table on him. He
just drug him outside. He just drug him outside. He dragged him down the steps, left him outside. He went inside. Him and Maggie or whatnot talked for a little bit. She cleaned them up, and then she left.
So, but that's my thing, though. So when he drags them outside, I'm thinking they're dead. Like, he punched the guy in the throat with brass knuckles.
That's what I thought.
So when he goes inside to get cleaned up, I'm like, well, eventually they're going to go out there and take care of the bodies. But then she drives off, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess maybe they're not dead. And then they show up and they grab him, and then they slit his throat.
That
so
shit
I'm
was
like,
crazy.
well, now he's fucking dead. So, and then you see her car stop, and it's very clear that she's gonna have to turn around to get something. They're very nice here. They don't get graphic. She goes back, and it's very clear she bumps into the two guys, and they do what you would assume would happen. But what I will say is they don't get graphic, and that's good.
Yeah, she goes back into the house. So,
Right.
like you said, she turned around. This all happened when she's driving away. So he gets his throat cut, and mind you, they don't show like the throat bleeding, but he uses his hands, and I think he's just trying to hold his throat closed from bleeding too much. So he's laying on the ground on the outside of the car. So when she drives up, he's on the opposite side, so she doesn't see him.
Right.
And she walks into the house, and these two dudes are in the house.
Right.
So like you said, they don't really show much, but you get the gist of what happened and things like that.
And then the next scene, we're in the hospital, and Forrest is in the hospital bed, and they're very quick to say that he walked to the hospital after getting his throat slit. Now, okay, I'm right away. I'm like, that's kind of bullshit, but whatever. I'll let it go. He's maybe just adding to the legend. It's adding to the legend.
Everybody believing the legend for what it is, because it's blown up so much that there's nothing you can say that he can't do at this point.
I will say, though, that from this point on, it bothers me how much Tom Hardy's character both talks and how well he talks. Because for somebody who's had his throat cut. For the remainder of the movie, he's got a bandage on his throat. And he does kind of talk like this, but he still talks a lot.
At one point, you can see the stitches.
Oh, yeah,
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think for the most part, he did a good job of not talking so much. But yeah, like you said, when he does, it's not very evident that he had a throat cut per se.
So while Forrest is in the hospital, Jake is going to take it upon himself to sell the whole stash of moonshine they have. Now they haven't been selling moonshine; they've been making it, but they haven't been selling it because they can't get across the border because of the whole thing with the Chicago guy.
And Forrest keeps the keys on him.
Right. So Jake gets the keys, he takes the stash, and he goes to sell the moonshine. He gets stuck up, and they're gonna steal the stash, and they're gonna bury the two guys. And Gary Oldman shows up, and he's fucking gangster, and he's basically like, yeah, kill the two drivers, which is Jack and
he said it was such ease too. It was with Cricket. It was Cricket.
Yeah.
Cricket was they portray him as almost like a slower. Yeah, like almost like a mentally, but he's like this soft and like he won't hurt anybody, and he's this nice kid and Shia LaBeouf's best friend and blah blah blah.
So I know what you're doing. You're building up Cricket's character for later. We'll get to that. I will tell you this: I don't like Cricket. I could get rid of the whole Cricket character and still be fine with this movie.
Well, I don't think it was Cricket. I think they want you to have certain feelings for when things down the line happen. It's a win for the bad guy. You have to give the bad guy a couple wins.
We're gonna sprinkle this in, and this is one of the parts of the movie that really, to me, holds it back from being great. is that there's probably about 3 or 4 main characters that I could completely eliminate and it wouldn't even change
Oh
the
yeah,
story.
no, I can see that.
And to me, Cricket's one of them. But regardless, they Gary Oldman, they meet him. He's gonna kill them both. They're in a ditch already, and I forgot. He says something about being Bonnarant
He says, "I'm from the Bondurant Stills."
right, and that's when Gary Oldman's like, get him out of the fucking hole.
Right.
And he makes so they end up sitting down at the desk. They work out a deal to buy the moonshine, $5.
But the deal was a big deal. No pun intended. So initially, early in the movie, I don't think it said too much or too. They don't really care if you know, but I noticed it was typically like $2.50 per jar or per cask or whatever, and he sold it to not only somebody, but he sold it to Gary Oldman, Floyd Banner, for $5. It's so he was able to go back. Yeah, that's crazy.
He's able to go back to Forrest and basically rub it in his face.
Right.
But the best part of this is at one point, Gary Oldman's character, the badass gangster guy, says, "Hey, I heard what happened to Forrest. It had nothing to do with me, and make sure you tell him that. Make sure Forrest knows that this shit had nothing to do with me."
People love this dude.
Because he's like, I don't want to come back. I don't want Forrest after me. Like that
shit was
pretty
crazy
cool
to me. But not only that, but he gave him a gift, an address.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So he goes back, he kind of rubs it in his face. And then I have in my notes, the brothers went without him. And I don't know what that means.
So he went back, and I kind of like that scene when he went back, because this entire time in the movie, Jack was trying to be like Howard and Forrest.
Right.
So he finally gets back, and they're like, "You stole the shit. What the hell are you thinking?" And he tells him, he's like, "Hey, I sold it, $5. Whatever." And then he brings up Floyd Banner, and he's like, "Floyd Banner, yeah, get the fuck out of here." And then he gives him, he's like, "No, he's got a gift for you. Here's the address." And when he handed him the address, that's when Forrest, it clicked. He was like, "Oh shit, this motherfucker."
Hell yeah.
But anyway, so that address was to, they didn't specify who. I'm assuming it's one guy, but maybe it was those two guys.
Yeah, it had to be the two guys that did that too.
And they went to to that guy's house without Jack, and Jack ended up meeting him there.
Oh, that's right. And they kill the guys, and they cut off their balls.
Yep.
And they mail it to the gangster guy in Chicago. And then at this point in the movie, you had that typical like back and forth. Like the guys in Chicago are going to do something and it's going to piss off the Bonnarant boys. And then they're going to do something that's going to piss off Chicago. But in the grand scheme of things, it's all kind of light. It's not, it's blowing something up or crashing something.
That one dude that had like, was it tar that he had dumped all over his body?
He had like
and he was left at the doorstep. That was nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy shit. So, and then we also have Jessica Chastain character and Forrest are now full blown like dating. Like they're screwing, they're sleeping together.
She's banging him.
She's banging him. He's banging her. It's all banging stuff. So Jack has built this humongous still operation and is selling all this moonshine, and he's, living it up with all his money. He decides to bring his new girlfriend to see the moonshine.
Which is so fucking stupid.
Now, Chicago is following him, so he's able to follow Jack right to where the moonshine setup is, and then all hell breaks loose. So there's a fire, people are shooting, Bonnarant boys are running around, the girlfriend's running around,
They had the chance to kill Rakes right there too, because they had Rakes on the ground, but instead he stepped on his face and called him a Nance.
Yeah, he rubs poop on him. But so that's a good point. I mean, is that the pig? I mean, literally, it's a cop. Is that the symbolism from earlier in the movie that Jack just couldn't kill him, and had Jack, but then Forrest could? So that's got to be the symbolism there. It's literally a cop, a pig. Jack couldn't kill him, but then Forrest does.
True, but we'll see what happens at the end, though.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens at the end. I don't even know. We'll have to just. So everybody ends up running away, and obviously Forrest is pissed off, but what ends up happening is Chicago gangster catches Cricket and he kills him.
that's when Jack flips a switch. But
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to bring up that detail.
Oh, about how awesome Cricket was and how nice.
Yeah.
And
No,
sweet.
so I wanted to bring up the detail that so he took Cricket, right? And as he's walking Cricket back to this alley or like in a bush or whatever the fuck, he's like, "Why did he call me a Nance?" Like it really
Yeah.
fucking bothered him. Even when
Right,
he
which is-
snapped, he snapped Cricket's neck. He snapped it on. He called me a fucking Nance.
Which just adds to the creepiness of this guy. Like he's just really creepy. So Jack feels responsible for this, and he goes after the Chicago guy. And I wrote down in my
nuts.
notes, this is very Gangs of New York style. Like it's clearly going to be a war. You get your guys, I'm going to get my guys, and we're going to go to war. And we find out during this whole we're going to war thing, Jessica Chastain does not want to watch Forrest die. And we find out he didn't walk to the hospital. She took him.
But
And that's
she
where
not only took him, but she took him after she was
after what
raped.
happened to her. Yeah. So and it's crazy. And Forrest is like, I'm going, it's my family, it's happening. We're going to war.
Well, but that little scene was like the tale of two worlds because her intention was like, I don't want to see you bleed again, and I don't want to have to go through this. So
Right.
you better not fucking leave.
Right.
And that turned into, wait a minute, what happened? And then as soon as he found out, that's what made him leave.
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right. I didn't even pick up on that. So then you had the shootout, and I wrote down in my notes, this is the order of who gets shot. So Jack gets shot first, then
Yep.
a bunch of cops get shot, then the driver of the vehicle that was carrying Forrest and Howard and a bunch of other guys.
He's gone.
Yeah, he got shot in like the freaking eyeball. And then Forrest gets shot, and then the Chicago cop gets shot, and then Forrest gets shot, and the Chicago cop gets shot. And that's the end.
No. Because you missed the one shot. I think. Maybe not.
Check the tapes. I'm telling you.
Well,
so
but there's a story behind those shots.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So if you watched any of the documentary stuff on YouTube, a lot of where this book comes from is these old pictures. This is a real thing that happened. This shootout at the bridge really happened. There's newspaper articles about it. There was a report done. A bunch of people went to prison for this, including the big head honcho guy. And that's where the book comes from. And this shootout with law enforcement is a real thing that happened in 1930. It's insane.
That wasn't even that long ago, to be honest with you. That's crazy.
That long ago.
But no, so what the crazy part is, so when Cricket died, one of the deputies or sheriffs or whatever went up to Forrest and was like, "Hey, we never meant for that to happen. We love that kid, yada yada."
Yeah.
And Forrest was like, "Well, you motherfuckers need to pick a side, because you keep going back and forth." And then you go fast forward to the shootout, and so Jack gets shot first, and then Forrest gets shot, and Forrest gets back up.
When Forrest gets shot, everybody in the county shows up and is like, motherfucker. That's when the cops are really like, whoa, 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 whoa. And you have this kind of lull for a second before it picks back up and the shooting begins again.
Yeah, well, that's when Rakes walks up and he's like, basically, you motherfuckers think that Forrest is immortal? I'm going to show you that he's not immortal right now.
Right.
And as he walks up, the deputy that's supposedly on his side, that had that conversation with Forrest, shoots him in the leg.
Right.
And that's when all hell starts breaking loose even more. So
Yeah.
I think that was a cool scene.
Yeah, I like that. And then that's really the end of the movie. Forrest lives, and you had this kind of recap at the end about where they go from there. They
jumped to 1940.
Yeah, all three brothers ended up living long lives. They have wives and kids and stuff. Forrest ends up dying of pneumonia, very untheatrically. But that's really it. So I want to go over a couple of things about the movie and how the movie got made. So Shia LaBeouf is actually the first one in the cast that's going to sign on. He signs on alongside James Franco as Howard and Ryan Gosling as Forrest.
Really?
Yeah. Amy Adams and Scarlett Johansson also get attached to the project, although it's unclear who they would play.
So do you think it would have been a better or worse movie had that been the cast?
Ooh, great question. Worse. I don't
I
think
agree.
Ryan Gosling is going to do as good as Tom Hardy, and I like James Franco, but I'm telling you, man, Jason Clarke knocked this out of the park. Howard is one of
Yeah.
my favorite characters in this movie. Although I do love Amy Adams and Scarlett Johansson. So, but originally it's going to be called the same thing as the book. It's the wettest county in the world. And then for whatever reason, the film has quote financing problems, which causes everything to fall apart. Everybody leaves the project except for Shia LaBeouf. He stays on attached. And the movie changes names to The Promised Land. Now, Shia LaBeouf watches the movie Bronson. Have you ever seen the movie Bronson?
It sounds familiar.
It
I'm not
is an
sure,
amazing movie.
but I
Tom
probably haven't.
Hardy, who is English, plays Charles Bronson. He is a notorious English criminal. If I remember the story right, and I'm gonna just make up some numbers, he ended up getting locked up in prison when he was like 17 for like stealing some money. Like he robbed a
Something
convenience store or
stupid.
something stupid. He's been in prison for over 20 something years because he's gotten so many violations while in prison. He's just an insane person. Like
What is that movie
he's
called?
Bronson, and Tom Hardy plays him, and it's a great movie. But anyway, Shia LaBeouf watches that movie and writes Tom Hardy a letter basically saying, "You're awesome. I want to work with you." The two of them exchange scripts, although Shia LaBeouf won't say what script Tom Hardy gave him. He gives Tom Hardy this script. Tom Hardy thinks it's amazing. He signs on. The cinematographer recommends Jessica Chastain, who just so happened to see John Hillcock's only other movie and loved it, and told
Wow.
him, "If you cast me, I'll do it. No problem."
So
Isn't it insane?
it was almost sheer luck.
It's completely luck. And then, like 3 months before the movie comes out, they change the title to Lawless.
I don't.
So,
I kind of still don't get the title. I mean, I do get the title, but I think it could have been
yeah,
better.
I mean, to be honest with you, any one of those three titles would have been fine. It doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
But I just think it's crazy how this cast comes together. And I really do think they do a great job.
So, okay, the one question I wanted to, we don't have to talk on it long, but what is your, I know your thoughts of Tom Hardy now. I want to
Mhm.
give you my thoughts of Shia LaBeouf because I would feel better about myself if you felt the same way.
Okay, good.
So, in my opinion, I think I actually wrote something down just to make sure. Here we go. Okay, so this is what I wrote down for Shia LaBeouf, right?
Mhm.
I think he's one of the best actors of our generation. Steven Spielberg was the producer for was it Transformers?
Mhm.
I think that didn't fit Shia LaBeouf's what he's good at, and I think some of the movies that he's been in, like The Tax Collector, for me was phenomenal. I think he needs to be able to show his abilities, like in movies like this allow him to, not like the Transformers. That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of those movie stars that just isn't cut out for big blockbuster movies. He needs to be in indie films. He needs to be in period pieces like this. He fits better there. He's a character actor. He can't
Right.
play a normal human being. He has to play a character. So yeah, I think I think he's a great actor. I think he's one of those actors that I think I worry that he might believe his own bullshit too much.
Well, probably, yeah, I could see that. I mean,
And
look at him.
that's
Look at his podcasts or
right.
YouTube
That's the
videos.
only thing that worries me about him. I watch his interviews. I think he's hilarious. I think he's a great guy. He seems really nice. He seems funny. He seems like he's lighthearted and a good guy. Although I guess there's some shit that's come out with, Me Too and all that other stuff. I don't know any of the details, so I'm not even going to comment on those. But I think that as he becomes more and more popular and becomes more and more of this kind of like indie punk awesome guy,
Right.
he's going to start believing some of his own bullshit, and I worry about that a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that.
But I think him and Tom Hardy make a great pair. I
Well,
think the two of them in a movie is phenomenal.
he has abilities, and however, whether he brings them out or not, when they're
Yeah,
out, they show.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, no doubt about it. So season 3 brings a lot of changes in the podcast.
New questions.
One of those changes is we've got some new questions for you this season to help us answer our podcast purpose, which is Is this a good movie? Lawless, 2012's Lawless. So here we go. The question game.
Here we go. I'm ready for this.
Question game.
Here we go. I'm ready for this. You ready? I'm ready to go. Psyched out. Nervous.
All right. Question number 1. Does the progress and rhythm of the movie fit?
That is a great question for this movie. I think I can understand if some people thought it was too slow at times, but in my opinion, I think it was perfect the way it was. I think a lot of the things had to be played slow for a certain reason, but I think it was phenomenal as far as how it was laid out and the progress that it made, and it flowed really well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be one of those people that thinks it's a little too slow, but I mean, I mean that it's a little too slow. It's not
Right.
it's not overly slow. It's just under 2 hours. I think you could probably shave another 10 to 12 minutes off of this.
Well, you shave the
Um,
bullshit like we talked about, like
yeah,
sometimes the stupid relationships that don't matter or whatever.
yeah. There's some back and forth, but at the end of the day, I don't think it really handicaps the film. I just think it's worth noting that it's a little too long for me. But okay, question number 2. What, if any, part of the film speaks to you and why?
What part speaks to me? Huh. I mean, as far as speaking to me, I think just my favorite part in the whole movie is when he first meets Mason Wardell and Charlie Rakes. I think that to me was just like it speaks to me because it's like no matter who you are, what man you are, you want to be that. You put yourself in those shoes. You're like,
Mhm.
man, I wish I could be that badass right there. It was an awesome scene. It was my favorite scene.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's a great scene. I think that I don't know. I like Forrest's approach as far as like I don't mind paying off the local cops. Like I don't mind doing something bad, but I'm not going to do it for the bad guy, the
True.
outsider, the one that's not part of my community, the one that's not, my local. Because I mean, even the cops that he pays off locally, you kind of get this sense up until the end of the movie, he's telling them like pick a side, like meaning, yeah, your law, our law, you're our community's law. So either be with us or be with them.
Yeah, I think it seemed to me like more like almost camaraderie, like almost like it was a family, like, hey, we know each other, small town
Yeah.
type of shit. And then when these guys came in, they just fucked everything up.
I think this might be the person binging Sopranos in me right now, but I like the unspoken, like I don't know, there's just some sort of like there's rules here. We may be criminals, but there's a code of ethics here, and I like
Right.
that. And then obviously you might have already answered this a little bit, but we bring back the classic question: what is the most important sequence in the movie?
Oh, I did not answer it. So that was an important sequence. Pretty important. But I think to not be redundant and repeat myself, I think another important one is when Charlie Rakes goes to the house and whoops the shit out of Jack,
Yeah.
and Jack doesn't fight back. I think that was a very important piece because it made it personal.
Hmm.
At that point, it became personal.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Honestly, I think the most important sequence is going to be the killing of Cricket, and the reason why is because I think up until that point, um, you have this back and forth war going on, but none of them are really taking direct shots. It seems like
So
they're
let me
both
ask you
kind
this.
of.
Let me ask you a question, and this
Mhm.
just came to my mind. I didn't have this planned at all. Looking back at this, do you think it might have been because they essentially had Cricket and Jack's girlfriend,
Mhm.
and Rakes takes. Why couldn't he take them both? That would have been insane, right?
That would have been insane. Yeah. And I think I mean that actually kind of plays more to even Rakes having some sort of code of honor. I'm saying like I'm not going to include the females. I'm not going to include the misses. Like we'll keep this between the gentlemen. Um, but yeah, that would have been insane.
But if you think about it, if it's a gangster movie like that, you want to hit home, hit where the heart is. In mafia movies and things like that, they would have went after the girl, 100
Yeah,
times out of 100.
Yeah, but she's the innocent, right? Like as an audience member, you're seeing the law include an innocent. Even Cricket, you can argue, isn't innocent. He's working the stills, he's part of the bootlegging operation, but
Well, he's
she's
the main
not.
guy. He's like the
Right.
designer.
Yeah. So, I mean, so there it is. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being horrible and 10 being a masterpiece, what rating do you give 2012's Lawless?
So when we played disc golf not too long ago, I asked you a question about what your rating is. What's a good rating for, like, say, Rotten Tomatoes or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
You told me 80% you consider a blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
I would take that, and I would say I would give this a 7.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I might even be able to be talking to like a 7.5.
Right.
This is a
Yep.
good movie. I saw it when it first came out. This was the second time I saw it. This is one of those movies where I watch it and I don't feel like I wasted my time at all. I probably wouldn't sit down and pick this movie as my movie to watch, but I like it. I mean, if somebody had it on, I wouldn't turn it off. It's a good movie.
Right.
So let's get into our favorite segment, Guess That Tomato.
Oh shit. I'm always wrong at this.
This is where I challenge the guest to correctly identify the audience rating for your movie of choice on Rotten Tomatoes. This is 2012's Lawless. You guess 0 to 100, and then I'll give you some clues, and then we'll see if you want to change your guess.
So, Rotten Tomatoes. I'm trying to think because there's so many fucking reviewers like IMDb and all that shit. I'm trying to think of which ones are usually the lower. I'm just gonna keep my 7 and make it a 70.
Okay, 70 it is. Okay, first I'll give you the critic score. That's a 66.
Well,
So the
that's
critics
not
gave
bad.
it a 66. That's not bad. But I wonder how close they are to the audience score. And then I'm going to give you 3 movies that are within 2% of this movie. So plus or minus 2% of the same score that Lawless has. But this season, we're going to do it a little differently. We're going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh no.
So your good movie, The Hateful Eight. This is coming from somebody who is not a Tarantino fan, but this movie is good. It's the whodunit mixed with overlapping backstories and Wild West in the winter, all thrown into a QT blender. This hits the spot. Movie number 2, The Bad Ghostbusters. No, not that one. 2016's all-female-led Ghostbusters, that is. Now, before you storm the studio, I like this movie. The bad part was thinking that it was going to withstand the massive shadow the original franchise casts. Some things are just not meant to be remade.
Fuck.
And lastly, The Ugly. Super Size Me 2. Holy chicken.
Oh no, the
The
Netflix
sequel to Morgan Spurlock's breakout documentary, Super Size Me. The ugly part, watching a grown man eat in excess to prove that a place with fried chicken in the name is bad for me. Thanks for the breaking news, Morgan.
I'm kind of upset that my movie is close to 2 out of those 3.
So there's your hints. You rated it a 70. Do you want to change your guess?
Fuck. Yeah, because the Ghostbusters 2016 was fucking awful. So I'm gonna have to go lower, which, I'm not surprised. Before I guess, I was hoping this movie would be better rated, Lawless, but I'm gonna have to say 65, just because if you're there, unless somebody rates the other movies better, that's gonna be crazy.
So the correct answer is 74.
Really?
Yeah, 74. I don't know how those other movies got close to 74,
I
but
was
yeah.
gonna say, how is that even possible?
But it's right in line with what we were saying. I think it's a pretty good movie. I mean, it's definitely not a movie that I felt bad watching. I've watched many worse movies for the podcast.
Right.
So yeah, man, good pick.
Well, yeah. Well, see, my thing is, like, you don't have to watch. I don't like to watch movies more than once generally.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the movies I would pull out every couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
Watch.
Absolutely. So as you know, it's a firm belief of the owners that Don't Forget a Towel that everybody geeks out on something. While it may not be movies and comic books, maybe it's brewing your own moonshine and shooting local cops. So I got to ask you, Mike, what is it you're geeking out on right now?
Well, for starters, just football in general. But beyond that, let's get to this disc golf thing, okay? You, me, Joe, and Will we have a date for Destiny on November
That's right.
6th, right? So the first place is already set in stone with Joe. Now, mind you, I think we're gonna get better and catch his ass next year.
Yeah, for
Will
sure.
comes in fourth. That's not even a
That's
surprise.
not even a
Hey,
surprise.
shout out, you got a hole in one, but you still suck.
He did get a hole in one. That's the thing. That's the thing that pisses me off the most is that he is horrible at disc golf. He is last place every time we play, but he's got that one thing holding over everybody's head is that he's the only one to get a hole in one.
Well, but it was awesome. It was awesome. But no, so I'm really actually looking forward to that and just more football, man. That's pretty much it. The Niners aren't doing too great right now, but you never know what the fuck happens, right?
Yeah, man. Same thing for me. Like I said, I've been watching Sopranos. I'm almost done with that. But fantasy football and disc golf has been a lot of fun. It is gonna come the end of the season. Me and you duking it out for second place. I think you got me though right now. But it's definitely gonna be a close match. And then honestly, I'm looking forward to disc golf in the winter. I hope
Dude,
they
me
keep. I
too.
know some of the parks are gonna take the stuff down, but I think some of them leave them up. And I'm excited to go out there and see what we can do.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Basil will still be up for sure. Because we went there pretty late last year. Or
Yeah.
was it a year and a half ago, whatever.
Well, thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. No worries. Hey, head me on again next year, and we'll see. Hopefully, I can make the top 10 this year.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Later, man.